Hey everyone, Joe Axman here. Hey, what's up? In this video, I want to talk about ego, consciousness, and evolution. So this is just going to be a talk. It's not your cup of tea. Go on. Alrighty. I'm going to start this off with back in 2012, I was going through a real uh, deep, powerful awakening and also trauma healing, right? Often they go together, which I'm going to get to. But there was a really pressing question that came to me that I felt like I needed to answer in order to move forward in my progress with where I was at. And the question was, who am I? Right? And I didn't obviously come up with this question. It's actually a very it's one of the central questions in things like Advaita Vedanta or even Zen, right? I don't think Zen has a well, whatever. You could study Zen for yourself, but it does come up in Zen. But really, Advaita Vedanta, it's like the core question, especially the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, right? Who am I? That's this core is central, right? And it's not really there's not like it's not like in Western sort of academia where it's like there's one right answer or a proximity of right answers and wrong answers. It's meant to stimulate you to gain awareness, right? But the answer that I came up with that clicked for me, that made sense to me, and again, this is not the answer; it's an answer, right? So it is. I am that which longs to know itself, right? When I said, "Who am I?" and then it came to me. I struggled with this for a while, but I can't. It just clicked for me. I am that which longs to know itself, and what is that? What does that mean, right? Well, we can think about like, okay, you know, consciousness, right? The process of becoming more conscious, something that starts out unconscious. It's not only lacking awareness about itself, but everything. But if, let's say that, with this idea that all is one, right? Well, all is if all is one, then what is this one? What is this? What is the substance? What is the core substance of what we're, science might look through electron microscopes and do all these experiments, but underneath all of that is consciousness. It's all on the screen of consciousness, right? They wouldn't know anything if they weren't conscious of it, right? That how would you have any memory? How would you know what to do? It would just be nothing, right? Conscious, it's all on the screen of consciousness. And even this idea that the brain produces consciousness is recognized on the screen of consciousness. So we go back to what is the core fundamental experiential reality, right? Which I'm getting to is we could say it's consciousness, right? Or, you know, I am that which longs to know itself. To know means to be aware, conscious, right? A conscious of itself. So there's this progress of unawareness, asleepness, semi-consciousness, right? So there's got to be some middle stage and then full consciousness, right? Full self-awareness. And I mean, what does that sound like? It sounds like the ego, right? The ego is like, I'm a thing, but I don't really know what kind of thing I am. So I'm gonna, pretend I'm this thing, and I'm gonna pretend I'm that thing. And then, you know, they call it a mask, and sometimes in spirituality, like I'm this mask, that mask. But it's all a facade, a pretense, right? We're not any of these things, but we put our identity around them, right? So yeah, identity is core. Identity essentially is ego, right? Whatever we identify with becomes our ego, right? So that is core and understanding that what I'm trying to express here, the picture I'm trying to paint, right? Like almost like this, like an abstract something or other. Hopefully, it'll come together a bit more clearly. Um, yeah. So in the beginning stages of consciousness, it has to go from unconscious to conscious, right? Before we are born, we plan out our life, right? And we pick a certain basket of karma, if you will, to work through. We can't work through everything, right? But we can work through some things. We're resolving past life issues. ultimately we're trying to learn, we're trying to grow, we're trying to gain experiences, right? Because if we are extensions of God, God created us, breathed his the breath of life into our nostrils, like, according to Genesis. But basically, essentially, you know, God gave us consciousnesses of God, right? And so there's this process of growth and gaining in consciousness, right? We are essentially God experiencing, and the only thing that separates us from God is our experience, right? If you want to know who and what we are, we are that God consciousness, that I am that which longs to know itself, right? Um, and a whole bunch of experiences, right? Which we call, me, I call it Joe Waxman. I'm Joe Waxman, right? This whole bundle of experiences, right? But it's a process of growth and, um, yeah, learning, knowledge, experience, right? So that's what. So when we're in our pre-birth planning stage, we're planning out our karma, which is resolution for past life, things that we may have done to others. Now we're going to receive the other end, or something like that, right? Like, it's always balancing. We're always in the realm of karma. It's always like, okay, we have to experience both sides. Like, if we've been abused, then we also have to be the abuser. If we've been the abuser, we also have to be abused, right? We have to experience both sides, and that's what's reported again and again and again by NDEers and past life regressioners. They validate all of this, not just one, but like so many. There's thousands and thousands and thousands. There's way more evidence of this kind of stuff than anything else, right? Like religious or whatever. So I mean that's pretty reliable. Um, so we come into this world with a basket of karma, right? A basket of a sleep consciousness or potential, right? Like, for me, let's give some grounding to this. For me, it was when I was a boy up until the age of 10. I was happy-go-lucky, right? I was literally a very, very happy kid. Uh, Huge appetite for food and life. I was funny. I was always joking. I was very sweet and loving. And then, at 10 years old, my brother, my full blood brother, who I had always lived with, he was 12. He was older. We fought a lot, but we were so close. Um, a train hit and killed him, right? And what that did was it woke up a huge amount of fear in me. Huge. I was 10 years old. I was living in the Garden of Eden, right? There was nothing wrong in my life. Everything was peachy, rosy. I was loved by my mother, by my father, by my grandparents. I was living a wonderful life, right? Really, really protected and happy. And here comes this shock, right? This really intense shock. And I didn't know anything about death. I didn't know anything about fear or pain or anything like that. I was devastated. Um, I was so scared. I was so scared. And that's what trauma is. It's like all this fear awakens in a person, and it's too much for the person to handle. So it gets buried in their nervous system and in their organs and their body everywhere, right? That energy is a real thing. It's a tangible thing. It could actually be measured if we had the right tools, the really sensitive tools. We can measure the amount of fear that somebody's carrying. And fear is always also pain. So I call it often fear pain, right? Because it's the same. Fear is a this pure unconscious potential that now is awake, right? It has partial awakeness. It was asleep. It's like, you're asleep, and then somebody like smacks you across the head, and you're like, wow, right? Like you woke up, but you're in a lot of pain, and you're grumpy and you don't know what's going on because you haven't gained full awareness. You're like, oh my God, my head hurts. What the hell's going on? Right? That's what happens in a trauma. We plan it, right? So there are no victims. So I'm not going down that road, but what it's for is to start this process of growth of consciousness, right? Trauma wakes us up. Pain wakes us up. Hurt wakes us up. And that's what, it's not comfortable. It's not easy. The ego hates it. And we often get this cliche, how could God, allow, good people to suffer? First of all, God allows free will. Second of all, we choose the suffering in order to grow, right? That's the reality of it. That's the truth of it. We chose it in order to grow because that's what happens, right? It's not just about being asleep and, living this, white picket fence fantasy. But what good is that? Like, right? Like nothing ever bad happens. If we wanted to live a life where nothing ever bad happens, we wouldn't be born here on earth. We just stay in the spirit world with God's love, the angels' love, right? Like it's perfect up there. It's there's nothing wrong, right? We come down here in order to experience pain, and there is no growth without pain, and there is no pain without growth. So if you experience pain, you're experiencing growth. And if you want to experience growth, you're going to have to experience pain. That does not mean suffering because suffering comes from the resistance to pain. It's difficult to not resist pain because pain sucks and it hurts, but that's the reality. If we can get past the resistance, which is story, which I'll get to, then we can, go through pain without suffering, right? But pain is inevitable in life because life is a process of growth. We're here in a physical, very dense reality, and so pain is going to be it's nobody has a life without pain. Nobody, right? There are people who have like uh sort of like vacation lives they're called, where they've had several lives in a row which have been really difficult, and their soul needs a rest, so they have a vacation life and they have a relatively easy life, and everyone else is kind of jealous. But if you understand that we've all had vacation lives and we all still will have vacation lives when our soul is ready for that, then we can stop being petty, you know. Petty. I hate the pettiness, right? Like, oh, they have it better than me. Oh, I want that. Yeah. Like this is not conscious, not very evolved. So, um, yeah. So the asleep state, when before we wake up, right, through trauma, through some event that shakes us up, rattles us up, and elicits a lot of fear, we are in the dream, a deep dream state where everything appears okay, right? Um, and in that state, we're followers, right? The analogy would be like air. Like there's nothing to it. Air is going to just do whatever that wind blows this way, it blows that way. Like if you have a balloon, it's got air in it, and then you name it. We're going to call it Bob. Bob, the air inside of the balloon, and then you pop that balloon. You're not going to be able to get Bob back. Bob is going to mix in with all the air, and you're never, ever, ever going to get Bob back, right? Same thing with you go to the ocean, you take a cup and you scoop out a cup of ocean, and you're like, this is Bob the ocean water. And then you pour Bob back in the ocean, you're never, ever going to get Bob back. You're going to get something else back, not Bob, right? That's the difference. When we're asleep, we have no personal identity. We have a group identity. We're like air or maybe even water if you want, but I think air is a better analogy, just more appropriate. It's expanded, it's loose, it has no real differentiation. Air is just air, it's see-through. We get whatever's in the background, right? Whatever's in the background. And that's like people who are asleep. Whatever culture and religion and family stuff that they grow up into, that's what they know, right? And that's their reality. That's what they identify with because they got nothing, no substance of their own. They're completely asleep, right? And everyone has this initially, right? Most people, like some people have, there are rare exceptions, but most people are just blank slates coming into this world. Then through growth, they wake up and their soul starts speaking to them and whatnot. But yeah, the kind of emptiness, and a lot of people go through their whole life this way. They're just complete reflections of their religion, culture, family, village that they grow up in or whatever, right? They're just complete, they have no substance of their own. There's no independence, no questioning. They're just complete blank slates. They're followers, right? And you see this, they have a group identity, whatever the group believes, they believe. It's like, if it's a modern person, they're listening to the news, whatever the news says, that's like what they're willing to, fight for, right? It's kind of silly. I mean, but it's a stage of evolution where it's just like they're asleep. They're just following. They have no independence, no substance of their own, no questions. They're followers, right? We've all been there. So then what happens is that the trauma, the event, the thing that wakes us up, right? Which pretty much we all have. Most of us, right? Except a rare, few who have vacation lives. They can spend their whole life asleep in La La Land with their soulmate, right? Usually. Apparently soulmates are real. Who knew? Twin flames, soulmates, whatever you want to call it. And some people are born in lives with their twin flame soulmate. Those are vacation lives, right? Because you don't really grow if you found the perfect person. You don't grow as much if you found the perfect person to love you and you love them, and it's just like heaven, right? It's just perfect, right? That's not really fodder for growth. So most people are not born into the same world as their soulmate, or twin flame, whatever you want to call it. But yeah. Um, but we all plan these challenges to resolve karma, right? So at some point, we're all going to go through something really challenging, traumatic, that is going to awaken the sleep consciousness, right? And it's going to evoke the fear pain, semi-conscious. It's semi-conscious. So that's when we start questioning. We start questioning the values that we grew up with, the religion, the culture, your family value, what your parents taught you, what your school taught you, what you grew up with, whatever conditioning you've been through. It doesn't mean you're going to get the right answer, but it means you start questioning because you're partially conscious. You're not completely conscious, but you're not completely unconscious either. You're in between, right? And this stage, the people are very emotional, right? When they're identifying where the identity has attached on to semi-consciousness, we call this the ego, right? It's the ego, meaning that the mind, the self, the sense of self is latching onto and identifying, saying, I am this, you know, fear-based it's not calling itself fear-based, but it's like I am this person and I am angry about the way things are. I'm also sad and scared. But I was abused, for example. I was abused and now I'm really angry and these institutions are wrong and here's my answer and it's blah blah blah. But it's very emotionally informed, right? Like it's not just sad, right? It could be sad, there could be sad, but sadness is like really the most benign out of the negative emotions. It's usually more like angry, hatred, fear, a lot of fear. There's a lot of pain, motivation, delusion, confusion. These things, you can't separate them. You can't just be like, yeah, I'm angry, but I'm totally right. You're not, right? As long as you're harboring negative emotions, you're going to be confused by them. That's just a law. I mean, it's a fact. You might be right about some things, but overall, your motivations, your biases, your overall thinking is going to be it's inevitable. It's inevitable, right? Unless you're like, no, I don't even want to say that. Unless, yeah, like pretty much that. I mean, if you're a master, then you're just not going to be in that situation anyway, right? Um, yeah. So yeah, the people who are in the stage who are identifying whose ego is wrapped up in the semi-consciousness, they're always emotional. You can see their emotions. And I'm not saying I'm completely removed from this. I'm just along far enough where I can see it objectively, right? I can see my own, you know, residual things that I need to work on because I've just been so hyper focused on it for so long. Uh, but most people are not. Most people are not interested in really like moving towards, their own evolution. And there have been periods in my life where I've been on the fence about that too. I think when one video recently I said I didn't want to become enlightened, but that also was due to some faulty ideas that I was harboring, right? Believing in. Um, anyway, the whole reason we're here is to grow spiritually. So it's like if you don't want to grow spiritually, you're kind of just doing it wrong, right? Like you're anyway. Yeah, that's a phase. It's a we will there's many uh what like cul-de-sacs you could call them spiritual cul-de-sacs where we get trapped for a little while along the path, right? So when we identify with the stage, you can always tell because it's like it's just the emotional motivation is really strong. And it's usually the negative motivations. And there's a sense of usually a sense of entitlement because of victimhood, right? Um, Yeah. And so we see this all over the place. And it's, I don't want to be like, yeah, I've been in that, we've all been in that stage, right? Anyone who's had, most people are, if you're watching this, you've probably been through some trauma, right? You've probably been through some stuff that's really challenging and painful. And that probably, I mean, not probably, it definitely woke up some things in you that you became more conscious because now you have an experience, right? That's what experiences do. They make you more conscious. If somebody's never experienced anything bad and then you come up to them and you're like, I've been through hell and back, right? Um, you're going to be more conscious because you've been through more stuff, right? That's just what that is. It's a one-to-one thing, right? So um yeah, there's this, I forget where. So yeah, it's very emotional. It's confusing. It's confusion, and there's a lot of questions without clear answers, right? They do question a lot. But this is all the people. This is all the people who are like, you know, angry and yelling and and entitled and they think because they've had bad stuff happen to them. There's often like when people have bad stuff happening to them, they think everyone else like nobody else or just like a select few have had bad stuff happening. And there's a whole bunch of people out there living, these perfect lives. And that's wrong. It's wrong. I mean, if you study spirituality, you have to understand that's wrong because also like, the race thing, like, and the, intersectionality, victimhood Olympics kind of thing. That's all wrong too, because we're all souls. We've all been every single race, every single gender, every single ethnicity, every single religion, every single nationality. Like we're all in it together, right? Like we're all just souls, and souls don't have any defining qualities except our experiences, right? So, this idea that if you're darker skin, that you're going to suffer more, that's wrong. Like it's just wrong because we plan our lives before we are born and we choose the body, we choose the situation for the evolution of our soul. Which a lot of these people, the reason I'm bringing it up is because a lot of these people who are in this semi-conscious stage are using a lot of that stuff to sort of perpetuate and validate their victimhood and their suffering, and it's like, oh yeah, this wouldn't happen to a white guy in America. It's like bullshit. Like that kind of thinking is just wrong. It's like you could be a black woman living in Africa or as a Asian paraplegic or whatever, and then you could be born the next life you could be a white man in America, and then the next life you could be a Middle Eastern farmer or something. It's what I'm saying, like none of that has any relevance. The DEI stuff, the minority nonsense, like brown people, black people there suffer more and white people don't. That's just such incredible garbage. It's just couldn't be more disgusting. Right? It's just meant to divide us. We're all souls. We're souls, right? That's first and foremost. You have to understand that we are souls, and souls just are here for a short time. And these bodies, these are just suits. They're cars. Like, are we going to make a big deal about what kind of color car we're driving? You drive a white car, you drive a red car, you drive a black car, you drive a gray car. Who cares, right? That's not relevant at all. So, like the people making a big deal out of it, shut the fuck up. That's stupid. Well, I mean, obviously they're going to keep doing it. My telling them to shut the fuck up not going to have any influence on them. But it's not an evolved thing. And it's part of the semi-consciousness. It really is. Of course, the people who are perpetuating it are, psychopathic masterminds trying to control people, but that's different. Anyway, a lot of people are caught up in this middle ground of semi-consciousness, and they think just because they're a little more conscious than those who are fully asleep, that gives them, authority and right, that makes them right in their anger. Makes them feel validated and justified because there is a little more consciousness than those who are asleep, right? And they can see that. They know that intuitively. They're like, yeah, I'm more aware than you who have never questioned anything, right? You who never had anything bad happen to you. A lot of times it's projection, they're projecting that, but still, there are those who haven't yet woken up to, anything more than, their sleepy consciousness that they grew up. Right. Um, there's a lot of resistance in this middle stage. And the middle stage is the most interesting because this is the stage that where there's the most growth and transformation, right? The two poles, whether you're asleep or awake, it's very peaceful, it's very calm, it's very stable. It's almost like plateaus. You got the low step, we got the high step, and then we got the in-between step. The in-between step is the really challenging part. The semi-consciousness, when you've been traumatized, when you're trying to heal from the trauma. And then your ego is identifying it with it because we want to have an identity. We want to know who we are. That's the struggle. I am that which longs to know itself. A desire to know. So therefore, when we desire to know who we are, we're gonna make guesses, right? Oh, I'm a nurse. I'm a fireman. I'm a policeman. My name is this. Identify with this religion and this group of people and that, all of the identity stuff, right? Um, I wish people who are into identity politics studied spirituality because it would clear up a lot of confusion for them if they were, studying a bit more, deeper into what is identity. What does it mean to identify with something? Well, it's ego, right? That's how ego operates. It's like I'm this, I'm that, but it's confusion, right? It's just a mask. It's not reality. Um, so yeah, there's within the semi-conscious state there it's a war, it's a battle because it's like conscious versus unconscious, right? Partially conscious and to varying degrees you can see like a gradation, right? A spectrum of how little consciousness versus conscious versus how much, like is it like 10% conscious or 90% conscious, right? Or 50% conscious and all the variations in between. Right? That's gonna make a whole spectrum of different kinds of people, right? There's a lot of a battle, right, in the semi-conscious state between the conscious and the unconscious part. The conscious part wants to live, right? And we can recognize this by there are no suicidal animals, right? Like a roach will never run under your shoe so that you can step on it. Neither will a mouse, right? Neither will a spider. At the same time, and though they're more on the unconscious side, right? They're not very conscious. But when we get into the semi-conscious state, there's a battle internally for existence, right? But because it's like, yes, I want to live, but there's not a full commitment to life, right? That if things get bad enough, you'll see people who are identified with this semi-conscious state. I've experienced this plenty of times too. It's like it gets so bad where the unconscious part is saying, um, or the conscious part is being influenced by the unconscious part and saying, I don't want to live anymore, right? That the suicidal urge comes from the semi-conscious state because it's the mix between consciousness and unconsciousness, and the unconsciousness can pull down the consciousness to a point. If things don't go its way, like you see this all like with this election, you see a lot of these people being like, "That's it, I'm gonna kill myself," or "I'm out, I'm out, I'm leaving the country," or "I'm gonna shave my head and do all this stuff." That is, and I'm not picking on them because most people are in the semi-conscious stage. It's just an example. Um, that is an example of that, right? That is how that works. And I've been there plenty of times, like when things don't go my way, my ego's way, my identity's way, the way that my semi-conscious, thoughts would believe that they should go. I too have been in places where I'm like, I don't want to live anymore. And I get, but I can recognize that, especially the more evolved I get, the more I'm like, oh yeah, there's my semi-consciousness creeping into my consciousness, trying to drag me into the darkness, right? That's what happens. The more you study these things, the more you become aware of your own your own processes. And it's important to be as objective as possible, um, as about your own processes, right? Everything that's going on inside yourself. I'll give you one example, which I've talked about before. Um, Crying, sadness is actually a beautiful and enjoyable state. Like, I know that sounds very opposite and counterintuitive. Everyone's like, no, I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to cry. Don't cry. Right. Like they have the belief, like some people are like, oh, if you cry, you're a pussy. Like, right. And I don't like crying in front of other people. So I'm gonna always try not to do that. But when I'm alone, the actual experience, and let me get to the other side of this, the actual experience of crying without the story, that's the catch, is beautiful and enjoyable. Crying is enjoyable. The part that makes it unenjoyable is you're believing a story. You're believing this and that happened, and it's so sad, and it shouldn't have happened. It was wrong, and I missed them, and blah blah blah, and they dumped me and left me standing in the rain. You know, it's song material, I guess. Um, yeah, we have to learn to see through the story, and it's not just with sadness. It's with sadness. It's with everything else. The hardest part about being objective about with our emotions is seeing through our story. It's the story that distorts it, and the story that gives it a bad meaning, right? There's nothing actually bad about being sad. It's like, like I said before, it's like, are we, is, do we believe some kind of story when it rains? Like everything's going to hell. It's raining outside. I don't know. I should kill myself. It's raining. It's no. But it's like if it's raining on the inside, we do have this story. It's like they left me and it's so sad. I'm such a victim. I should kill myself. Oh, it's like we have to be objective and see through the stories, right? If we're objective and we can not believe our own bullshit and then see the experience as an experience as not us. We don't have to identify with it, right? Like if I'm sad, it's not like my core, it's not like my soul is sad. It's just there's this a sadness, or it might be like I don't know. Let me take that back. The soul might experience, I mean, the soul might experience sadness, but it's not like, that's not the core of who I am, right? It's not who I am. It's not what I am. And I can actually look, because I've trained in doing this for a long time. I've trained myself to look at my emotions objectively, right? And it's not like I never get caught up in the bullshit. I do, but it's a process, and you have to go through that process too. You have to question yourself. You have to pause. You have to pull back, because if you pull back when you're being emotional and you're acting on emotions, what you're doing is you're removing your identity. You're pulling your ego out of the unconsciousness, the semi-consciousness, right? You're saying, okay, like, hold on, instead of reacting, which is the emotional response, the semi-conscious response, I'm going to question it. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to give it a little bit of time and see what's going on. That is actually a huge step towards growth if you can do that, right? Then you're responding, you're not reacting. And you're shifting your identity, which is the ego, to something that is more conscious rather than less conscious, right? People have this idea that about the ego, that the ego means arrogance, which it often does, and that in order to be enlightened and to grow spiritually, we have to kill the ego, right? Kill the ego, kill the ego. But the ego is just identity, right? And let me put it this way. And I'm just going to use two very well-known historical spiritual figures, Jesus and Buddha. And I like both of them. I want to listen to both of them. I'm not partial, right? If I call out for, let's say, like, you know, if you believe in all this stuff, you believe in the spiritual realm and whatnot. If I call out Jesus, is there an identity out there, or Yeshua, he called it, that's the real name, Yeshua. Is there a being out there who would identify and respond with the word Yeshua? If I say Yeshua, you know, I'm calling on you now, right? Do I get Buddha instead? No. You know why? Because they also have egos. That's the trick. That's something that I learned recently. They have egos because they have identities. If they didn't have identities, they would be like water. They would be like air. We would not be able to separate Buddha from Jesus. And of course, there is a level where that is true. Pure, undivided, undifferentiated, undivided consciousness. That exists, right? Where we're all, everything in the universe is undifferentiated and we're all mixed together. We're all like the ocean, right? Or the air. And, Jesus, Buddha, me, um, Mother Mary, um, all the historical figures, Lao Tzu, Bodhidharma, spiritual masters, everyone, just everyone. It would just be every, living soul on earth and dead. It would just be one undifferentiated, you know, um, uh, consciousness, right? But in this realm and in various realms, there are differentiations. And that is still essentially ego, right? It's not the same kind of ego. It's a transformed ego. But I'm pretty sure that there's a spiritual being out there who identifies as Yeshua, Jesus Christ, and there's also one who identifies as Buddha. They don't lose their identity. They don't lose their history, their experiences, their story. So the ego never dies, is my point. And the reason that's significant is because death is a daunting idea. We don't strive to die, right? Just like the cockroach does not jump under our boot to be smashed, nor does the spider or the mouse. There are no animals that want to not live. There are no plants that want to not live. Plants produce chemical compounds to deter bugs and animals from eating them, right? Everything wants to live, including the ego. So if we set up this ultimate end for the ego, you have to strive towards your own death. That is not a good selling strategy for the mind, for the ego. The ego does not want to march to its own death. I can guarantee you it. Right? There might be times where it's, resisting life to such a degree where it feels suicidal. That's different. That's a very destructive process that's mired in confusion and illusion and fantasy and delusion and it's almost always followed by regret, right? um so that's not a good um uh, point to base this on, right? The overwhelming consensus is that life wants to live, and ego, which is partially conscious, has its own identity. Like we identify with it. It calls itself I, just like everything else. Everything calls itself I. Even in even animals that there's an I inference, right? It's like a dog barks, and there's the implication of selfness, right there. A dog recognizes self, and it's not suicidal. It doesn't want to kill itself. It wants to live. It wants to eat. It wants to love. It wants to play, right? There's a sense of selfness and I-ness there. This overwhelming, sense of self wants to live. Ego wants to live. So this idea of ego death is not, we need to update that. And the ego doesn't die, it transforms, right? Just like Buddha and Jesus both can recognize themselves as, an identity, as an individual, all right? And all the spiritual masters, all the beings, that nobody loses their identity once we die. We maintain our identity. That means ego or identification is something that transcends the body and this earthly life, and even can extend into full spiritual mastery, like the highest levels, right? Whoever a lot of people believe Jesus is like the highest spiritual being in the universe. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, I don't know, right? Whatever, but Jesus has an identity. Yeshua has an identity. He has an ego, right? So it's a spiritualized ego. It's a fully clear ego. It's not an unconscious ego. It's a fully conscious ego, right? So, but there's still that ego. So ego never dies. We don't die. Ego never dies. So like this whole idea of ego death, and that's just it's not as evolved an expression as we can have. Another one along the same lines is that is the how the chakras, we talk about the chakras opening and closing. Oh, my heart chakra just opened and my heart chakra is closed. My third eye just opened, my third eye is closed. What all that stuff nonsense, right? A better way of saying it is that the chakras are always open, right? They just are dimly lit and numb from lack of attention. That's the reality. That's a closer approximation to what's really happening with our chakras rather than they're closed or open, right? And so what we're experiencing when somebody says my heart chakra is closed or their heart chakra is closed, what they're saying is that there's likely a lot of pain in that person, whoever's like it's said like they have a closed heart chakra. There's likely a lot of pain there, and that person has been ignoring their heart for a long time. So there's a numbness there, a numbness, which means they don't feel the heart, good or bad, right? They don't feel like joy or love or pain or sorrow or regret or remorse or any of the heartfelt emotions because they have ignored their heart. It's not closed, it's just numb. That's one of the tricks of semi-consciousness is that it can put itself to sleep or a proximity to sleep. It's not fully asleep, but it's very low vibing. It's there's not much light there. You don't feel it much, and so somebody who's unwilling to feel the pain that they've gone through will have a closed heart, right? And all they need to do to open their heart, it's not really opening, they just need to pay attention to it through meditation. I mean, and you want to know what meditation is? It's shining the light on yourself, making yourself more conscious. I mean, it's just literally, it's like a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing. You're literally taking your own consciousness and becoming more conscious of yourself. And that's what meditation is for. It's for making yourself more conscious, right? If you take your attention, your awareness, the light of consciousness, and you shine it on your heart, that heart is going to become more aware. You're going to feel your own pain. And that feeling of the pain is the process in which things become more conscious, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm feeling pain. What is feeling pain? Being conscious of pain. If you're conscious of pain, pain is becoming more conscious. It's literally, that's what it is, right? It's a very straight, simple relationship. I'm feeling pain. Pain is becoming more conscious. If you feel your own pain, stop taking the painkillers, right? Pharmaceutical is pretty mostly evil, right? Just to let you know, the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not saying that you should never take any painkiller, but tangents. Stay focused, right? Yeah, feel the pain, feel the sorrow, feel the sadness, feel the pain, feel the remorse, regret, feel the hatred, and just stop identifying. Take the identity out of it. Take the belief system out of it. Just put it on hold for a minute. Just be like, I'm gonna sit. This is my time to disidentify and to just be with the pain. Never mind, so and so hurt me, and it's their fault that they hurt me, and I'm a victim. Right now, we're just gonna work on healing. I'm saying, when you sit down in meditation or, for whatever you want to call it, and you're just like, I'm not going to believe my mind for a little while, and I'm just going to sit with whatever is going on in me. That's healing. That's literally healing. If you give yourself the opportunity to feel all the things that you're feeling, you will heal. That's 100% what meditation is for. They're more subtle. It gets more and more subtle as you go along, right? And it stops being emotional, right? But for a long time, it's very emotional. And there's phases, right? You can go through different phases. You can go through one phase, things can reawaken. I mean, that's what happened to me recently. It's like I was like at the end of one phase and I had a huge awakening and I didn't kind of blindsided. I thought I was at some finality, and then like a whole new phase opened up for me. And I'm like, oh, good, yes, more trauma to work through. But it is what it is. I mean, it's reality. Like, I think people often get confused about awakenings. Like, they think they reached some sort of pinnacle, and it's like, pinnacle the right one? Anyway, some high point, some stability, and then they're like, oh, now I get to go through a whole new, chapter of stuff, right? But it's awakening, right? Like, stuff that was asleep then just wakes up again, and it's like, oh, now there's all this pain that was asleep and numb. Now that's awake too, right? So it's a good thing. It's a good process, right? Um, but yeah, it's literally about feeling and disidentifying, not believing your thoughts, at least for temporarily, right? It's just like temporarily, we're going to stop being a victim. Temporarily, we're going to stop blaming so and so for what they did to me, right? Even though I chose it. Even though it was like we shook hands on it. It was a deal. Like, I did this to you, now you're going to do this to me. And you've done plenty of bad shit in your past lives, so stop judging everyone, right? Yeah, anyway. Um, so where were we? I'm gonna pause it for a second. So, yeah, meditation is extremely useful and important for raising your consciousness, right? Because it's very little. It's very one to one. It's very point to point, right? Like you turn your consciousness towards yourself, and that's how you evolve. Whatever your consciousness is focused on is going to grow in relationship to you, right? Like so, whatever you're paying attention to, right? And like trying to notice where your consciousness is going. Like, is it going to social media all day? You're watching, videos on YouTube. What are you doing? What are you paying attention to? Right? Because that's what's going to grow with you. If you're always paying attention to something, it's going to evolve. You're going to evolve in that relationship, right? Like they say, practice makes perfect, right? That's what that's pointing to is that wherever your attention is going, that's what's going to grow or evolve with you, right? So if your attention is turned inwards, what's going to grow? You're going to grow. That's, I mean, literally what that is. And it's a very people don't like it. They're fascinated by everything external. But like you want to change your reality, turn your attention inwards. That's the direct, straightforward way to change your whole world, right? And like things like The Secret and Law of Attraction are sort of pointing to this, but in a very, especially The Secret. Like I hate The Secret. You know, I made a video about that because it's just such garbage bullshit. It's not that there's not a grain of truth to it. It's the way they orient it. They market it to the ego. They're like, if you know this secret, you can get money and houses and cars and girlfriends and boyfriends, and you can manifest whatever you want. And it's appealing 100% to the ego, which is the semi-consciousness, right? Semi-consciousness is full of desire because it lacks, because it's not fully conscious. If we're fully conscious, then there's no lack, right? The state of love and joy, right? And truth, full consciousness. The lack state, the state of desire is semi-consciousness. So the ego is always desiring more money, more stuff, abundance, spiritual abundance. People want to be egotistical and pretend that they're spiritual. They want to call themselves spiritual and be egotistical. That's what The Secret is all about. And The Secret, if you want to ask me, it was created by the Illuminati to infiltrate the spiritual community because I don't know this for a fact, but this is my sense because it's satanic. The ego, I'll tell you why it's satanic. Why The Secret is satanic. Even if you look at the book, it looks like the snake. It's meant to fool people, guys. I hate to break it to you, but I love to break it to you. It's meant to fool you. It's meant to fool stupid people who are like, I'm so spiritual. I use The Secret to get whatever I want. Me. I manifested this. You see it online. I manifested this. I manifested that, but I can't manifest that. How do I man? It's no. You're just you get certain things in life, and you think you're manifesting it. What's really going on is that you're just trying to empower your ego, your lower ego, your semi-consciousness with all these spiritual tools, and you think that's what spirituality is, and it's not. That's egotism. That's occultism. Occultists use magic to enhance their ego, right? I mean, it depends what you call by occultist. I'm talking about like the dark side, right? The Satanists, right? They'll use like spiritual principles to manifest their ego for their ego, right? So it's very a low vibration. The real thing, and then a slightly better one is that like slightly higher, slightly more evolved that people call it. Well, no, it's not The Secret. It's the law of attraction, right? The law of attraction, the law, and manifesting and abundance and co-creation. And I hate to break it to you guys. Again, I love to break it to you. Who am I kidding? Um, yeah, like also not very evolved. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, exactly why this is because thoughts are emanations of the energies we're holding on to inside of ourselves, right? If you're holding on to pain, trauma, fear, uh, hatred, all this stuff, it's all the same. It's all fear-based. Fear is a shapeshifter. It'll transform into every single negative emotion, right? If you're holding on to that semi-consciousness, your thoughts are going to reflect that automatically. It's like think of thoughts as the smell of whatever you have. Like if you have flowers, the thoughts that the flowers are going to produce are beautiful and fragrant, right? However, if you have trash, the thoughts that the trash is going to produce is rotten and gross and disgusting, right? So if your energetic body is full of trash, which is essentially the semi-conscious state, not to put it down, but that's essentially because it's like it's not complete, it's lacking, it's desiring, and it's smelly, it's dirty, it's fear-based, it has it's very emotional and usually negative and like negative emotions, right? And so the thoughts that come up from this are very negative. And so if you're just going to be like, I'm going to control my thoughts and therefore I'm going to manifest, you're ignoring the trash and you're just like, Febreze. Febreze is how I'm going to get a nice smell, and therefore that's going to produce nice things. Like, just take out the trash, and that's what spirituality was. And like this, what the worst part about it is they're like, forget all the spiritual masters that ever were. We figured out the secrets to the universe. You think Jesus and Buddha and Bodhidharma and all the spiritual masters, Sri Ramana Maharshi, were just like, oh, we didn't know about the secret. Oh, it took these fucking actors who are just like, very low vibing to tell the world about the secret, right? Like, are we that stupid? Are we that fucking stupid that all the spiritual masters were just like, oh, I didn't know about the secret. I knew about everything. I just conquered the whole fucking universe, but I didn't know about the secret. Like, give me a fucking break. Like they're pulling one over on you. Like it's like we know there's no secrets. I hate to break it to you. There are no secrets. The secret. Fuck you is the secret. The secret is you're trying to make money off of dumb people. That's the fucking secret. I'm just telling you the truth, right? We know all the secrets because we have spiritual masters, a lot of them, and they all say the same thing. If you know how to read the different expressions and not caught up in the dogma, they're just different expressions. They're all saying the same thing. The self is God. I mean, if Buddha said, recognize the self, recognize your enlightenment. That's connection to God. That's oneness with God. Like, give me a break. It's not different. When Ramana Maharshi is saying all is self, recognize the self, become self-realized, that's oneness with God. It's connected. There's no different. You can either seek God or you can seek the self or you can seek both. They end up at the same place. It's the same damn place. They're all saying the same thing, right? And none of that bullshit is like, you can get money if you just control your mind and your emotions. Like, stop trying to control your mind. Just take out the trash. Take out your trash inside. And naturally, you will manifest everything that you want and need. Because the truth is, there is no lack, right? You don't need lots of money. You don't need any of this stuff that the secret is trying to bullshit you into believing you need. Oh, it's spiritual. We're spiritual. Oh, we got the secret and we just figured it out. It's new spiritual technology and nobody ever figured it out before. Not Buddha, not Jesus, not Lao Tzu, not Bodhidharma, not Ramana Maharshi. We figured it out and we're just fuck faces, right? These aren't evolved people who are talking about the secret. They're not. They're not evolved. They're not enlightened. They're actors and business people and like just they're middle of the road. They're normal people. They're not spiritual masters. How are they going to figure out like the secret of the universe when we have the masters telling us everything that we need to know about the whole universe, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's not. It's and like co-creation and manifesting. It's just bullshittery. It's just like for spiritual amateurs, is what it is. People are just like, oh, I'm just really into spirituality and law of attraction. It's like manifesting and co-creating and oh, no, don't go down that. It's a stupid path. It's the path of stupidity. It's the path of ignorance and path of just meditate. Meditation is as old as time itself. And by meditating, you're taking out your own trash, and therefore the thoughts that naturally come up in your mind are going to manifest, great things for you, right? Um, Thoughts are emanations of our own energy. So you don't have to control the thought, just take out the, right? It's like, yeah, I mean, it's stupid. It's stupid. There's a bad smell. We've got to cover up the smell. Try really hard to control the smell. Just take out the thing that's making the bad smell. That's all it is. So anyway, that's what meditation is for. You are literally changing your own energy. You're making it more conscious, more evolved, brighter, and yeah, it's not the open close. You're just cleaning it out, right? You want an open heart, clean your heart out and shine the light of consciousness on your heart. Third eye does not open, and it doesn't close either. It might be clogged as can be, and you can't see anything out of it. It's like the windshield that's got like a inch thick layer of mud on it. You're not going to see out your windshield with that. It doesn't mean it's closed. I mean, it's not wrong to say it's closed. It's just not accurate. It's just clean it off. That's all. Pay attention to it. Shine your light on your third eye if you want to have an open third eye, right? You want to see stuff. You want to know stuff, right? I know, like, I'm not saying my third eye is completely clean, but I can see like my body extremely well. Like I know what's going on inside myself. I can see stuff, right? Like my consciousness has evolved to such a degree that I can get like a 3D image of like all sorts of things inside myself, including energetic stuff. I see where the ego is going, what it's doing, where it's moving. Like, yeah, an ego, I can tell you, or semi-consciousness, which we identify with, and it becomes ego. It has mass, right? It has mass, and it can move around the body, and like I said, we can measure it if we had the tools that were sensitive enough to this vibration. But it is a literal, it is a thing. It is a thing. It has consciousness. It has its own form and shape. It's usually a black mass. That's the way I see it, right? And so, yeah, meditation is key. And there are many other practices, like body movement, all types of body movement, yoga, qigong, tai chi. That's all really good. Self-inquiry, where you question yourself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Because if you give yourself a question, your soul a question, and you don't answer it, because answering is like death of a question, right? Don't answer it. Just keep questioning, right? You will get answers. You will get better and better answers, right? Because you're giving it to your soul. Your soul's now, doing the crunching, the process of learning, and it's going to work on it even when your mind is doing other stuff, right? So you give yourself that question, that self-inquiry, you will eventually get knowledge. Kirtan, right? Singing to devotional music. And if you like, whatever your religion is, you like the devotional music of that, and it's not, that's fine too, right? But if you sing along to that, that's going to help open up your heart, especially your throat chakra, and that'll clear out a lot of negativity that way as well. Singing and dancing, right? And if you look at the people in the kirtan videos, they're just like bright, shiny, radiant, beautiful people. Like they're the most beautiful people because they're constantly cleaning out their hearts, right? When we sing, it's usually like heartfelt, right? So it's like you're singing constantly to God, which is non-dual. If you're singing about romance, it's caught in a duality, right? It's not the same. Like you're singing pop songs, you're singing rock songs, whatever. Like that's not going to do it. But if you're singing to God, that cleans you out. It cleans you out, cleans out your heart. And go look at kirtan videos. These people are just like the most beautiful people you've ever seen in your life because they're so clean, right? They're just singing all the time and their hearts are so clean and pure, right? So, the analogy, the overall idea of what I want to convey here is, I can point to this one story. a person in an NDE was in their NDE, their afterlife, their the other side, they're in the spiritual side of things, and they asked an angel or their guide or whoever, why am I here? What's my purpose here? And the angel, the spiritual being, said, to summon your will. And I really want you to think about that. That was the one sentence answer to his whole existence, to summon your will, right? Like, what's the meaning of life? To summon your will, because this can be applied to everyone who's not already a master, right? Why did he say to summon your will? What is will? Willpower is what is will like? If I use my willpower, who's using the willpower? Well, me. Where does it come from? It comes from my own efforts, right? I'm doing it, right? So it's a function of ego, is what I'm trying to get at. Willpower is a function of ego, and I don't mean that in any sort of negative sense. It just means like I'm doing it. I'm using my own effort, my sense of individuality, and I did it. I accomplished this thing with my willpower, right? Um, why is that? Why is he saying that's the purpose of his life, or life in general? That's one answer. It's not the only answer, but it's a very important one. Um, to summon your will, what does that mean? Summon. It means to gather, right? To summon means to gather, because our will is very loose. And we look at the progress of consciousness from asleep to semi-conscious to full consciousness. Which do you think is the most expanded? Which is the most contracted of those things? Well, I'll tell you, the most expanded is the unconscious, because it's like air, right? And air is wispy, it's ethereal. It's like it's hard to grab onto, right? We can feel it, but it's very expanded air, right? And why is that? Because of the state of following, right? There's no substance to it. There's no identity. You take somebody who's unconscious, they have no real identity. It's like, who are you? You're not anything except your environment. You're completely transparent. Like, I can look right through you and just say, oh, you are completely 100% a product of your environment, right? So there's no substance to unconscious person. When a person's semi-conscious, now they have some substance. They're like, I'm not a part of that. I'm angry because I've been abused, and I'm questioning this and fighting against that, and damn it, you're gonna hear me. I'm emotional, and because I'm emotional, I'm right. That whole thing. You see this all over the place. Not knocking it. I've been there. I can still fall into that some once in a while. But it's very heavy with emotion, but there's the identity. There's more of an identity there. There's more of a solidity there. So what happened? They have to gather their will. They go through a trauma. They're in pain. What do they have to do? They have to make a lot more effort than the person who's asleep, right? And that's what summoning the will means. Summoning the will means making an effort, right? In order to, like, if you're summoning your will to do something, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Okay, let's do it. I summoned my will. I rallied the will. I've gathered my will. I'm condensing my will. I'm making my will more dense, right? I'm making my consciousness, my semi-consciousness, my egoic identity more dense, more identified, because I'm trying. And that's why people go like run marathons and climb Mount Everest and do all sorts of crazy things, become CEOs. And you see people are very proud of all their accomplishments. I did this. That's all like the impetus to gather the will and to try hard to achieve, right? I achieved, and now I'm somebody. I climbed Mount Everest, and I got a PhD. And did you do that? No, you didn't do that. I'm better than you, right? Because I exerted my will. I gathered my will. I summoned my will. Now I'm more solid. And my name is so and so, and I have an identity. This is who I am, right? And whenever you see my name, you're going to think of all this stuff that I accomplished, right? That's the solidification of will. And compare that to the person who's fully asleep, who has no identity except a group identity, tribe identity, right? Who's more solid? It's the person who has a name that is immediately recognizable. Michael Jackson, right? You know, Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Donald Trump, right? Whoever, right? They've done it like, or the PhD, and it's not all, I don't just mean famous people, right? It could be like somebody who of, who's accomplished a lot, and just their name says it all. Like, who are they? Well, it's so and so. Like, that's who they are. They've done all this stuff. You don't know who so and so is? What's wrong with you? It's so and so. It's Joe Rogan, right? It's it's Joe Biden. It's all these people, and well known and not known, but like their name is synonymous with with what they've accomplished. Now their identity is much more gathered. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's going from less dense to more dense. The consciousness, the ego, right? It's more and more packed, right? If I call out the name Jesus, do we confuse Jesus with which Jesus are you talking about? You mean Jesus who died on the cross or Jesus from down the street? Like I'm confused. Like there's so many different Jesus. Which Jesus do you mean? When you say Buddha, which Buddha do you mean? I mean, there's like a million different Buddhas. Like, no, there's fucking not. Like we know exactly. We just say one word, right? And that's what we know because their identity is very condensed, right? So this is the process of what we're trying to do here on Earth. We're trying to summon our will so that it can become more and more and more condensed, right? And a really good analogy that I use is like, we have like air, liquid, solid, and then ultra solid. So like in my experience, and this isn't the only analogy, this is just an analogy. The semi-consciousness has a quality that is similar to like carbon stuff. So like oil and tar and coal, right? And so like a good analogy would be like, like the sleep state is like carbon dioxide in the air, right? It's like CO2, it's like air, it's transparent, right? Then something happens and it becomes like oil. It's like a loose but more physical, sticky state, right? Like ground oil, right? And then the oil through efforts, through challenges, through trying to heal, we're trying really hard in life and we're exerting our will, we're summoning our will, we're rallying our will, we're gathering our will, we're forging our will, we're becoming independent, and it becomes more and more dense, right? It's becoming into like tar and sticky. You see these women shaving their head. They're making their willpower stronger, right? That's really what's going on. They're like, I'm sick of this. I'm hurt. It was wrong. It's bad. Very emotional, right? Doesn't, of course, it's going to be negative because that's the fear-based, that's the semi-conscious state. It's very negative, but they're like, damn it, we're going to make more of an effort. We didn't make enough effort. No, we're not going to have casual sex anymore. We're not going to date men. We're not going to marry. We're going to shave our head. We're going to wear blue bracelets, and they're becoming more and more dense in identity and ego. That's the process. Doesn't matter if you agree with them or not. The process is it's all going to be confusion in the middle ground. It's all confusion, right? It's about exerting will, becoming more and more identified as an individual, and becoming more and more unique. Ultimately, the final stage is we go from oil to tar to coal. Coal is very hard, right? But black, right? It doesn't, you put a pile of coal on a light, it's going to block the light, right? Final stage, coal turns into diamonds. And what happens with diamonds and light? Brilliance, right? That's the enlightened state. That's diamondhood. Diamondhood is where the ego becomes no longer a detractor from the light, right? The light shines through the diamonds, creates amazing, beautiful, spectacular, dazzling display of colors and lights and brilliance, right? That's the analogy, right? The ego doesn't die; it becomes diamonds. Think of it that way, because like you take a spiritual master, somebody who's really evolved, whatever your flavor, whatever you like, they are identified. They have an identity. They have a history. They have a name. Like they're not confused about who they are. They're not just pure undifferentiated light and consciousness. They have a unique identifier. Therefore, they have an ego. But that ego is no longer based in darkness. It's no longer based in lack. It's no longer desiring because it's full. It's you desire what you don't have, right? But if you're full, then you don't desire. Like you have a big meal, you got everything you could ever want for. You're not desiring, at least for a little while. But that's the state of diamondhood. That's the state of spiritual mastery. That's the state of full consciousness. And the diamond no longer detracts from the light like coal does. You put coal on light, it's the light's blocked out. But if you put diamonds on light, the light is enhanced. So it has the opposite. It's like enhancing the light. It's multiplying the light, magnifying the light, enhancing, making the light even more brilliant than it was before. It's like the truth is everywhere, the light is everywhere, but it takes somebody who's gotten to this spiritual mastery to make the light even better, right? Like whoever your favorite, teacher, guru, messiah, whatever it is, right? You love them because the way they can, speak and teach and think and express themselves, and it's like better than just, the light, the light that's on its own. At least, I don't want to say better, but it feels better in certain ways, right? Because it's dazzling, it's spectacular, right? They enhance the light because they've achieved this kind of diamondhood, right? And the diamond also has other qualities. It's extremely hard. Diamonds are forever, right? The diamond can cut glass, right? Diamonds are one of the hardest materials on the planet. So it's like when Jesus was alive in Judea, Samaria region, wasn't Palestine, by the way. That came later. Jesus was, I don't know, Judea, Samaria, somewhere in that area. Jesus was not, going with the flow of his culture and society, right? He was not air. He was not water. He was not liquid. He was not oil. He was not even coal, because coal is easily crushed. We can crush coal. We can stop coal. We don't have to worry about coal. But a diamond, you cannot stop a diamond. I mean, we can, like, we can cut diamonds, but like, just as far as like, for the sake of the analogy, a diamond is like the hardest rock there is, right? And a diamond, you're not going to influence a diamond, right? A diamond will influence you, right? It's the other way around. So like, the society did not manipulate and influence Jesus. Jesus manipulated and influenced the society so much that we're still talking about him today. Same with Buddha. Like, Buddha was not influenced by the Hindu culture of the time, the caste system and whatever else. He changed it. He defied it. And so much so that they made a whole new religion out of him, right? He went against it because that's what it means to be diamondhood. You're so solid in your identity that you've become hard like a diamond, and you're no longer, you can watch the news and you're completely unflinched by the news. By the way, I never even took a PCR test. That's how hard I am. That's how hard my identity is, right? It's not influenced by the news and the media the way most people are. I mean, that's just an example. Anyone who is more spiritually evolved, they're not influenced by the news. Anyone who's less spiritually evolved, they are influenced by the news. And you can see this. They're all like, marching with their signs or whatever, and just like, and not just all, so many people, right? But yeah, that's the difference. The people who are more evolved are not influenced, and they're not part of the crowd. They're not part of the group. Anyone who's part of the large masses, the groups, they're less evolved automatically because they have no independent identity, right? The independent identity comes through great efforts, through spiritual maturity. And that's how you know. Is somebody part of the masses? Are there's like, yes, we, the millions and millions of people who are marching in the streets, are right. Unless you're the leader of that group, you are just not. You're not that evolved. Um, and it's not to say that all marches are wrong, but it's just that's just the nature of things. It's in order to be independent, in order to be evolved, you have to be independent. You have to be hard like a diamond, and you have to shine bright like a diamond, right? Like the Rihanna. So it's been pointed out that diamonds don't shine, they reflect, but they magnify and they refract as well. So anyway, whatever. So that's the analogy, right? We're moving towards an independence and a very, very solid, hard identity. It doesn't mean you're hard. It doesn't mean like you're emotionally hard. It means your egoic will is very, very firm, right? They couldn't break Jesus, right? They couldn't. They tried to. They couldn't break Jesus. They couldn't break Buddha. They were hard like diamonds, right? And these people are like hitting them with coal hammers or whatever, right? Even iron hammers, they won't break it, won't break a diamond, right? They're trying with all their might to break Jesus, to break Buddha, and they can't, right? Because they're hard like diamonds in their will, in their identity, in what they stand for and what they know to be true. And that's the ultimate stage of consciousness, this hard like a diamond and shine like a diamond, bright like a diamond. All right, so a diamond really is a good analogy for the enlightened state of consciousness. So that's pointing to, so that's the how they we can look at the ego. The ego doesn't die, it becomes diamonds. Diamonds are cool, right? Diamonds are forever. Um, yeah. So the ego never dies, chakras are never closed, and um I guess that's it for this talk. I don't want to make it too long, make uh bore people or whatever. But that's what I got for today. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting, at least entertaining. And hit the like button. Um, subscribe if you haven't already, and book an astrology reading with me. Still open, still available. Uh, so yeah, there's that. And yeah, and if you just want to talk like I'm also available to talk about other stuff if you want to talk about like spirituality or other practices, evolutionary practices to evolve and become healthier and stronger. And I'm also available for that. So anyway, I'll see you around. All right, bye.